The South African Zionist Federation has hit out at the South African government for taking sides in the Israel-Palestine war. This was said at a gathering organized by the South African Zionist Federation, where hundreds of people gathered at the Yeshiva College campus in Glen Hazel, Johannesburg, on Sunday to honor Israeli civilians killed in the Israeli-Hamas clashes. Those gathered expressed their unwavering support for Israel and condemned the acts of violence and terrorism that have claimed the lives of more than 2,000 people. The gathering denounced the government's stance and President Cyril Ramaphosa's support of Palestine, saying they're backing terrorists. Still in South Africa, the Minister of International Relations for South Africa, Naledi Pandor, has called for a boycott of products made in Israel due to the current crisis in Gaza. Pandor made the appeal and emphasized the necessity of addressing the condition of Palestinians in the Middle East during a speech at a conference organized by the National Union of Metalworkers of South Africa, NUMSA, at Constitutional Hill in Johannesburg. Pandor described her most recent encounter, saying the chairperson of the African Union Commission had invited Israel to join the African Union as an observer. In an update on Saturday, the Palestinian Ministry of Health said more than 2,000 civilians, including 724 children and 458 women, have been killed since the conflict broke out 1 week ago. Meanwhile, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has said the ANC stands in solidarity with the people of Palestine. He also said the decision taken by Israel to cut water and electricity supply to Gaza is a violation of human rights. Now, senior researcher, Southern African Liaison Office, Lwazi Somya, joins me on the news for more on this. Good afternoon, Lwazi, and thank you so much for joining me.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
All right, now taking a look at what is happening in Gaza, with Israel beefing up its defense force and the warnings that has been sent to Gaza. When you analyze all of this, what is happening right now? What exactly comes into your mind about what we can expect next?
So we should start off with the causality of the problem. What caused the problem? What caused the problem was 70 years of occupation and dispossession of Palestinian people, and the international community's complacency concerning their occupation. Now the violence meted out by Hamas against Israel is an outcome and a symptom of continued occupation, dispossession, and general genocide are created by the state of Israel upon Palestinian people. What is currently happening is that Israel is effectively conducting human rights abuses, genocide, and war crimes in the Gaza Strip. Due to the mere fact they've cut out water, they've cut out food, they've cut out electricity, they've cut out even aid towards civilians. They've bombed civilian places, and they've broken a number of articles of the Geneva Convention when it comes to warfare, especially when you're dealing with what you perceive as terrorist groupings. So what is happening currently within the Israel-Palestinian conflict is a continuation of a struggle of resistance by the Palestinian people against an occupying force that is currently conducting ethnic cleansing within Gaza in Palestine.
All right, now, Lwazi, let's talk about, how Israel was caught unawares, in the recent offensive by Hamas. Now, what does this say about the Israeli intelligence, and why were they unable to pick this up earlier?
There were two brewing situations that were happening in Israel. Number one is the continued expansion of settlements within the West Bank, in which some of the military forces were concentrated on. Number two was reasserting Benjamin Netanyahu's power within the Israeli political space. Well, and that was what the preoccupation of the Israeli forces is. And the third one was being upset with Hezbollah within Lebanon. And this is why they were caught off guard, because the Palestinians marked the attack based on two issues. First, the announcement of Benjamin Netanyahu at the United Nations General Assembly by putting up a map with Palestine completely obliterated from the map of the Middle East. The second one was Benjamin Netanyahu's attempts of normalizing relations with Saudi Arabia. And the conflation of these two windows of opportunity created the perfect conditions for Hamas to attack in order for them to get their message out there concerning the continued occupation and the blockade of the Gaza Strip. The continuing human rights atrocities carried out by Israel only speak to a number of things. Number one, it is collective punishment against the civilian population of Palestine, which it's in itself is a war crime and a crime of genocide. And number two, the bombing of civilian infrastructure that the Israeli government is currently doing, which is also constituted as a war crime. So all these things, all the failures on the security apparatus of the Israeli government to prevent the attacks by Hamas have resulted in the gross human rights violations against Palestinians. And Palestinians for a number of years have been met at the brunt of Israeli occupation and the Israeli genocidal Israeli Defense Force.
All right, Lwazi, in the midst of everything happening between Israel and Palestine, I would love to hear your thoughts on the South African president, Cyril Ramaphosa, offering himself to mediate between the two countries and also calling for South Africa to boycott goods from Israel. What is your take on this?
South Africa has a long history, and part of our history is that of apartheid. The situation in Palestine reverberates within the South African population in terms of solidarity efforts, in terms of compassion, in terms of understanding with the Palestinian people. Even when South Africa was undergoing its own situation of apartheid under white settler colonial rule, Palestinians opened up their money, their pockets, their homes to train and also assist the African National Congress, which is the governing party within South Africa, to fight against the apartheid regime. President Ramaphosa, as part of South Africa's foreign policy, underpins his perspective on South Africa's position of ending all conflicts through dialogue and diplomacy. And this is why President Ramaphosa, due to his history as the negotiator for South Africa's democratic future, has opted for this mechanism in order to resolve the conflict. Secondly, the aspect of boycott, divestment, and sanction is a means of solidarity and sending out a message to the international community that Israel's actions cannot be normalized. And the continued atrocities made out against the Palestinian people themselves cannot be normalized. And therefore, a boycott and divestment of sanctions, similar to what was done to South Africa by the international community, it was recommended by not only the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, by the State President of South Africa itself. And South Africa, as the people who've experienced apartheid, also realize that the situation in the Gaza Strip is far worse than their own apartheid. Because during South Africa's apartheid, families were not bombed whilst living in their living rooms. Families were not arbitrarily targeted and shot point blank within their homes. The military itself was not an occupying force, but rather a segregational force. So part and parcel of South Africa's response is one based on not only its foreign policy, but the lived experiences through South Africa's experiences through apartheid.
Okay, Lwazi, let's stay on what you said about, setting up efforts to resolve this conflict. And let's talk about the United Nations response to this particular conflict and how the international community are being divided and, some also showing overwhelming support on Israel. Now, with this, how do you think Israel should react, especially for the sake of peace?
The only way Israel can find peace in this situation is if it ends its occupation of Palestinian territories and Palestinian lands. Until such a situation, Palestinians will continue to resist the occupation by Israel. And the role of the UN is to bring all the actors involved in the region, including the major power brokers within the international system, primarily the United States, actors such as Egypt, Oman, Turkey, and the neighboring countries around Palestine and Israel, alongside with some international actors such as Britain, to come together and convene a more multilateral, more meaningful, and longer-lasting peace process. Previous peace processes have been led by the United States of America, and they've all ended up in failure, including the more recent one through President Donald Trump, called the Abraham Accords, which was largely seen by international actors as a means of whitewashing Israel's war crimes within the region. And secondly, the other aspect of it, the other interventions such as the British interventions in the 1990s, all of these interventions have failed on the basis that it was not a multilateral and consensus-building initiative and a long-lasting peace process. So therefore, the future intervention strategies need to have the Palestinians on board, they need to have the regional actors on board, and they need to have every single person who's concerned about the conflict on board to chart a way in how do we realize UN resolutions on a two-state solution based on 1967 borders. So far, Israel is not willing to come to the negotiation table due to the populist right-wing government that currently exists there. And therefore, it will take pressure from the international community to convene Israel and bring them to the negotiation table so that a lasting peace process can occur.
All right, we do hope that a lasting solution is found to this conflict. But thank you so much, Lwazi, Somya, for joining us on the news today and also giving us an in-depth analysis on the Israel-Palestinian conflict.